What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And throughout this, journey that we've been on in, NFT 365 and, Web3 as a whole, one of the themes for me that really hit home early on was just the idea of like, how do we remove the starving from the starving artist? But even more so, like, how do we empower, great storytellers, great artists to focus more on the things that they love doing, which is creating. And as a creator, as someone that is a brand influencer, as a keynote speaker, I will tell you, I don't love entrepreneurship because I have to do all of the things that I don't love doing. I don't get to just record audio. I don't get to play on Twitter Spaces. I don't get to create just AI art, or not just to get on stages or work with brands, doing influencer work or whatever it may be. But I will say that there is, a shift in the tide in ways that we can bring things to life in Web3 in this NFT space, and that can come in all different forms and fashion, right? Everything from physical goods and physical services and physical art talents and bringing them into Web3, the creation of that in the Web3 world, but also kind of bridging these worlds. And I do want to give a shout out. There's one of the events that is upcoming that is called the CEX. And many of you that have been listening to the podcast for a good while, CEX was a sponsor of the podcast prior to their last event that they had going on. But it's an upcoming event. And I will just tell you, the lineup that they have for this event from an NFT Web3 perspective is world class. I would say many of my top 10 favorite speakers of all time will be speaking at that event. I will also be doing a workshop with Gigi from Crypto Tech Women. On day one, I'll be giving a keynote on AI, and then I'll also be giving a talk on Web3 and NFTs. So that event, I'll actually be on stage 3 times. And what's cool is, Joe Polizzi, who is a dear friend, a huge supporter of the podcast. He is a podcaster himself. He was the founder and creator of Content Marketing World before selling Content Marketing World. He's also given us a code to give out. So if you want to check out CEX, so it's in the browser, it's just CEX.events, and the code is NFT100. So if you put in there NFT100, you'll get a discount. But CEX.events in your browser. Check out the lineup. Check out that event. And it's actually a great example of these worlds coming together. World from, some of my favorite creators, some of my favorite live streamers, favorite Snapchatters, favorite TikTokers, some of my favorite artists, including some of my favorite founders of NFT projects, are all going to be on stage there. And it kind of sets a kind of a perfect kind of theme for this conversation today. And I'm going to kind of bring in I clicked the wrong button. So that's how that goes with video. I'm going to bring in our guest and my co-host as we're going to be talking, a little bit about, an amazing journey from a creator's perspective, from a photographer's perspective, and someone that's known me, I'm going to go out and say, probably longer than every person that's listening to this podcast. Maybe a few of you maybe have known me a little bit longer, but not only has she been a massive supporter of mine, but someone that we've kind of connected in many different forms and fashion. And I'm super excited to share the details at the end of the episode of her upcoming NFT drop. But before we even get into there, Leslie, excited to have you back. And we get to have a lot of fun. You and I get to have these conversations with some amazing artists that you're working with Nifty Gateway to bring their collections to life over there. And so, yeah, this is going to be another one of those great conversations. How are you doing today, Leslie?
I'm great. Thank you so much. It's been such an awesome adventure to get to know the artists that we've been working with and to feel so connected to the artwork and learn the stories behind them. It's just so meaningful. So it's been an amazing experience. And I'm fangirling really over Nifty Gateway too, of course. I'll give it a shout out there.
For sure. And I will say they reached out the other day. For those that haven't listened to the episode, where I broke down the 4 different marketplaces, they reached out, and actually I give a shout out to Foundation and Known Origin and Nifty Gateway. So 3 of the 4 reached out immediately and said, hey, do you mind if we share this video with our product team as far as feedback and helping us even fix some documentation? So I just have to shout out to the marketplaces for not only listening, but And I laughed that they asked for permission because it's a public YouTube video and a public podcast. I was like, sweet. I'm glad that resonated. So for those that want to check that out, that's definitely in our podcasting library as well as on YouTube. But enough on that side. Excited to bring Debra you into the conversation. Excited to have you on the podcast. Get to amplify your story. I mentioned here in the beginning, you and I first connected on live video, I believe 2014, almost 10 years ago, which is just a wild ride. And I remember for me, we were talking about this kind of green room, like where I was in my life, where I was as a storyteller, where I was as a creator. When Debra just first met me, I would never have called myself a creator, like let alone an artist. A creator would never have been in my vocabulary. I was a guy who liked to talk, and I didn't mind a selfie camera live stream. Like pretty much that was me in a nutshell. And Debra, it's been an amazing journey to be on with you, and excited to kind of amplify your story. And we're going to get into that. But before we do so, give us a little bit about your background, who you are. You have a fascinating story that also connects to your amazing talent as a photographer. But give us a little, kind of background of who you are, and then we'll get into some of the questions.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me, because it's definitely one of my on my bucket list here. So, and thanks to Leslie as well. She's amazing. Gosh, let me tell you, I went to school to with the intention to be a dentist, and not very many people know this, but my counselor said, you need to take some other extracurricular courses. And of course, I said, what else can I take? And so she put a piece of paper in front of me, and there it was, photography. And so that is how I'm here today.
Wow. I already love that story. That's already amazing.
Yeah, talking about some divine intervention there. That's amazing.
And literally, it's just curiosity. I mean, because, back then, it's film. And so you got this little roll of the film and canister. It's like, how do they get pictures from that? So, I've always been curious. And so, yeah, that's how I got here.
Well, we have a connection there a little bit, as it was one of the only classes I ever got an A in high school, because I was not great at school, was the photography class. And I actually took it again my senior year, because I loved going into the black room, learning how to turn photos into actual physical photos. And for those that are under 30, you can Google that, watch videos on we weren't able to just click and unlimited on that side. But so Debra, I love that, like kind of, and this is also just a big shout out. This is also why arts in schools is essential. Like we might be missing out on your gift and the story and the amplification of those that you get to take photos of, if photography maybe wasn't even an option for one of those electives in there. And I mentioned this on social a bunch, but I was at my daughter's made all county choir, and they must have said 15 times during their recital, please let your principal know that you appreciate the choir is here. Please let them know that you love that your kids are learning to be singers, because that it is important. And in our school district here, one of the things that is on the chopping block, like many school districts in the United States, is the arts. And so for all those that are listening, this example, I know everyone's going to kind of fall in love with Debra and her story, and just think about that. If that wasn't an option, that this might not all have come to life. And I would rather get a tattoo on my face than go to a dentist. So I'm glad you didn't become a dentist, because we would have definitely not connected, because I talk so much that I think that's why I just can't stand someone's hand in my mouth. But I love that you chose photography side of it. So talk to us a little bit about, your journey as a photographer. I know for me, one of the things that always, kind of amazes me is like, how do you monetize, right? How do you, what does that look like? And how do you stay able to kind of like create over the years, right? Because the medium changes. Also, digital cameras came out, and then there's these crazy things called smartphones that had cameras, and you've stood the test of time and evolved. And so, talk to us a little bit about like that journey as a photographer, and how you've not only built a business around it, but grown as a creator as well.
Well, back in the day, before we had our smartphones, way back, I did learn photography very in a conventional way, which was, 4x5, putting the film in the back of the camera. And, I kind of feel like I was always in the right place at the right time, because after, like, before I even went to college, I managed to connect with a photographer in San Antonio, because I used to live there. That's where my parents are from, and that's where I'm from. And I literally was able to connect with a photographer that literally took my hand and said, "This is a C stand. This is how you put it together, and this is how I create a shot." And so I definitely wanted to make sure that I went into photography after I had that amazing training. And I went to college for a couple of years, and then right after that, I actually became an assistant. It's kind of interesting to do that first, because just like in NFTs, to collect before you sell. So, which is great advice that you gave that I listened to. And so I did become an assistant. I was an assistant for at least 8 months. I kind of broke the rules, because you're supposed to be assistant for 3 years, but I kind of broke the rules. And then I landed a freelance position with Pier 1 Imports. So back in the day when photography budgets were hefty, and it was wonderful. So I literally was shooting on catalog for Pier 1, and then from there they actually offered me a job, and it was right before 9/11. Then 9/11 happened, and I said, I don't know what's happening in this world. I need some stability. So I actually was there as a senior photographer at Pier 1 for a couple of years, and I was actually very blessed to be able to create the brand, and taught photographers, a couple of photographers, the brand of lighting for Pier 1. Of course, it evolved since then, and Pier 1 is no longer. However, after that, I just kind of like felt like something was missing. Like, I loved shooting and everything like that, but something else was missing. And then that's when I decided to take a leap of faith, and then went on to becoming, like, literally just jump into this world of entrepreneurship, and just going for it. And then from there, of course, I've always stayed current. Like, always kept my ear to the ground. And when MySpace jumped into into the whole space there, I started shooting people and posting it on my MySpace, and then that brought me in business. And then I literally used social media as a tool, a good leveraging tool. It was like a free medium for you to go out, but then I also, of course, you have to rub the elbows and go to so many events and things like that. And it's a grind. It's always a grind, no matter what you do. And then, of course, as I was shooting, and this is actually during COVID, I had my earphones in, and I was listening to a Clubhouse space. And I've heard you mention this time and time before, but I used to kind of like gently stalk you, and I would follow you from room to room. And I landed in one of those, in one of the ape rooms, and they were talking about their apes. And so I'm going, what is this NFT stuff? So I actually started digging into just listening to a lot of Clubhouse spaces. Still didn't understand what all that was about. And then, of course, I stumbled onto finding your podcast and just immersed myself. I am pretty sure I've listened to all episodes, and my ear holes never got tired. But stay monetized is to stay current.
Ooh, I like that. Stay monetized to stay current. And you've, from like, I love that you brought up like MySpace and like, that journey from, and then, live video. I remember, our days on live video. And I remember, for me, this is one of those moments for anyone that is a creator of content, is that you never know who you're impacting or who you're reaching. Or, I'm a big believer that, it is important to recognize that like our messages can reach all corners of the world in ways that we often don't even recognize, right? And there's also people that kind of come in and out. And I also love that idea of like, you had like the Pier 1, you also had, the world has changed from, not to mention September 11th, fast forward to a global pandemic, but also all of the technology changes that are in there. And I know, Leslie, you and I, when we were kind of talking about setting up with artists and bringing them in. To be transparent to everyone, Debra was the very first person that came to my mind as a creator that not only that I've known her work, but I also have known, like, for me, when I look at the NFT space or Web3 space, I think there are lots of places we can make an impact and we can to deliver on. And I think not only your story, Debra, but also the story of your art, the story of who you shot, why you shot, how you've kind of brought that to life. And we're going to get into a little bit of that or we'll get into a lot of that for our audience. And I know, Leslie, I was excited because I know that one of the things, the first calls that you had with Debra as well, you were messaging me like, oh my goodness, her story and everything that she's been through. And these photos have to get out to the world. It's kind of a beautiful aspect here. And I think, Leslie, I think both of us, we both as marketers, digital, we talk about storytelling, we talk about branding, but I think it's also important when you figure out like some of the aspects of these immensely talented humans like Debra, like Jeff and Ryan, who were on previously as well, that like there's so many facets that can connect with people that we can all relate to. And I know that was something that you hit home with as well, Leslie.
Absolutely. I think that, I mean, I've talked about it so many times that how, the deep connection to the art and the story is that what I guess I realized is how many times I've already missed the story with other things. And it's something that, in Debra's journey, and I hope that she talks a little bit more about it. I'll lead you into that one. Her message about representation is just so amazing, and the aspect of body positivity and loving yourself and discovering yourself is such a powerful message that I hope that every person hears. But I hope that most specifically, I think about my kids. I think about like my daughter hearing that message, and like it's just an amazing discovery in this process to see that that's so well documented by photography. And it creates this sense of emotion that I think is such an amazing feeling. But I, of course, want Debra to talk about it. But I've been moved by it from the very beginning. I think within like 5 minutes, and Debra, and I'll tell this story. You said right in our first conversation, I knew I was different. And that's how our conversation started. And I think that's just also a message that everybody can resonate with. And and especially in Web3, we talk about meaningful connections and deep connections that we have with people that we meet in Web3 that are far greater, at least in my opinion, than some of my in real life connections. And you get to skip to that part where it's the most meaningful connection, and it's just a positive environment for people. I'm sure there's going to be haters, and there's haters everywhere, but there's such an acceptance, and I think that is just a message that flows really, really, really well in Web3, and it's an inspirational message. But of course, I want to kick it to you, Debra, to tell a little bit more about your story.
Sure. Let's get into it, but let's do a little warning. Let's buckle up because we're about to get deep. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with saying the day that I knew I was different. So in elementary school, a letter was sent home to my parents, and the letter said, if your kid, or any kid for that matter, speaks Spanish, we're going to send you home. So my parents went into the action item and stopped speaking Spanish. And these two components realized something went off in my head to say, okay, that's not good. That's bad. Let's hide that I am Hispanic. So that was the first time that I felt shame, but I didn't really know that it was shame. I just knew it was bad. So, and then let me go even further, because the second time that I felt the shame again was I was in high school, and I had a crush on my best friend. She was a female, and the only way that I guess I was able to express anything was, I was in my junior year, and at the time I was not of drinking age. However, and my parents know this story, so it's okay that they're going to watch this later. They're very much a part of it. So I got drunk at a party. Some guys we all pulled our money together, bought some MD 2020. We called it Mad Dog 2020. Bad stuff. To this day, I cannot drink wine. But I was so drunk, and then I just screamed out, like, I kept saying, I love you, I love you. And back then she was like, I love you too, but not which back then in the 70s, you didn't talk about that in that female to female love. I didn't even know what that was, to be honest. It was a foreign thing to me, but I knew that deep down I had those feelings, right? I just didn't know what they were. But I will tell you the way my parents got into the story. So I ended up going home. My older sister drove. I unfortunately threw up in her car.
Mad Dog will do that. Mad Dog will do that.
That's right. I stumbled in my parents' front yard, and my mom and dad lifted me, and then put me in the shower with all my clothes on. So since that day, unfortunately, I cannot drink wine. But the whole premise of being gay and not being able to express it like you can today, that was another level of shame. So, that's enough to just kind of like quelch anybody, silence people, silence anyone to not be able to express themselves fully, because, here I am, a Hispanic female, now gay, and the shame is, detrimental. So I believe that in regards to all that, when I decided, okay, how can I express myself? And of course, being a photographer, that was another thing, is like, as an assistant, I was very quiet, because back then when I was assisting in 1990, I'm not afraid to say my age, by the way, but when I was assisting in 1990, there was only a few women assistants. So you wanted to make sure that you stayed in the norm, if you will, right? And in order for me to work and to also be representative, as strong as a guy and as willing as what men can do, because it was a male dominated profession. So I managed to meet some friends that were in the assistant committee. And I remember this one woman who at the time, she was the president of the assistance committee. And she said, Debra, just work on a project that you're going to love, that kind of represents you and stuff. And I said, wow, well, what would I do? And then it finally occurred to me that to work on something that is the most shameful part of what women go through on a daily. I mean, it's gotten better. Are we there yet? I don't know. Will we ever be there yet? I'm really hoping that, like, in my maybe in my maybe Fanzo in your little girl's life, and Leslie in your kid's life, I'm hoping that at some point there'll be more equality.
I think we can all hope on that, but yeah, we have a long way to go for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I began this project. To be honest, it very first started very stark white. It was on white background. Had color in it, and that just didn't seem to register with me. And I just kept testing and testing, and then I'm going to be real honest. One time my strobe didn't go off in the background, and it was very dark. And I said, oh, that's it. That's what I'm missing. And then, of course, I just took off the color, and then Sensuality became alive. And so, yeah, I mean,
Wow.
it really has been just such an amazing, beautiful self growth from myself as a photographer.
And that was how long ago? How many years ago when you started this collection?
About 14 years.
Wow. So
Yeah.
14 years ago. Thank goodness that bulb doesn't go off in the background, right? Things happen for a reason. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and you sharing that part of your story. Not only being from a standpoint of, hey, we don't want you to connect with your heritage and speak the language that you had grown up with, but then also from a sexuality perspective, of course, from it being a woman perspective, and and being behind the camera right now, you're kind of bringing that to light. Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, so that was 13 years ago, and as you mentioned, we still have a long way to go, and things have started to change. But this idea of capturing sexuality as a photographer, I'm sure even just the narrative around different styles of content that people are willing to admit that they take, is different. Like, I know when I was married, our 5-year anniversary was a bedroom shoot that my wife and I did, and I remember us being like, we could never share that like with our family or talk about it on Facebook. And now I feel like I get a lot of that in my feed where people are celebrating their sexuality, but also intimacy at a different level. So how has that journey been for you as a photographer, for those that you've shot? And give us a little bit of like where the project has kind of come to life and how you're going to bring it to life for your, the people that you're shooting as well as yourself.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you said the word sexuality, because I think there's a huge difference between sexuality and sensuality. And I've shot both. I'm not ashamed to say that I do have clients that want to express themselves on a sexual nature, and so sensuality is a little bit different for me. That it is like an empowering feeling to have as a woman or a man. I hope. I'm not really sure because I'm not a man, but it's an empowering feeling to feel okay that you can express yourself in a sensual way, and not sexual, but sensual, and not have fear or vulnerability. And vulnerability is very courageous. That these women who I've photographed, they're very courageous because of the fact that this is a very private moment that they are expressing themselves. And when I say that, it's like not these photographs are artistic, and they're very they're very beautiful. There's but very much strength to it, and and you know gosh, let me just say this. When I began shooting sensuality, um, it first I just had these thoughts in my head, and I wanted to express the gentle touch. And our very first, when we would like somebody, other than looking at them and giving them the look, the very first thing that we do is reach out and hold their hand. And even that could be daunting, because you're going like, should I do it? Should I use my pinky? Should I use my whole hand? And then before you know it, your palm is sweating and you're shaking. But eventually you kind of reach over with that your pinky a little bit. And I wanted to kind of just show those little nuances that we feel that are not necessarily recorded, that make beautiful art. So these women that came to me, I wanted to make sure, number one, they were diverse, they were okay to express themselves, and some of them would cry because they didn't understand. They didn't really understand their inner beauty, that it can be outside of them as well, and they could slow down and really feel and explore and understand that their vulnerability is not something that should be shameful. Back in the 50s, women were considered second-class citizens. They were not allowed to vote. And the simple thing was that, if, they were looked at as women who produced, the population, right? So even to this day, um, you know, uh, uh, stimulants for women are not allowed to be advertised. Like, let's just say for Facebook, for example,
Right.
you will not see any kind of devices for women to help them in their sexuality. However, you will see ads on Facebook for erectile dysfunction. So it's still okay for us to say, oh, men, that's okay because that's for men. but it's not okay because it's for women. So again, we are being shamed to explore and to express ourselves in that instance. And I will tell you that I have been taken down before, numerous times, 3 times on MySpace, 4 times I think on Facebook, and also another somebody else's Facebook that showed my art that wasn't even my Facebook, and then 3 times on Instagram. I was warned numerous times on various social media channels. So it's like, and each time there are uh, photos of women, not sexual photos or not porn photos, but artistic photos. So that just gives you a huge um, interpretation of where we are today and where we're not today.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up too, because like the idea of filtering on social, the difference between sexuality and sensuality, as you so beautifully kind of brought to life. We don't look at that, especially from male to female. And I know Twitter, and we talk a lot about decentralization here, right? And the idea of removing censorship, which I like that aspect of decentralization more so than a lot of the other aspects of decentralization that we know that are out there. And and I've shared this before, on the podcast as well, but like, 2 of my first clients that I had ever had as an entrepreneur, from a personal brand perspective, were both adult film stars. And I was working with them on their personal brands. And it was my first, I was the ignorant male that had no idea of, I can post a shirtless photo with me at the pool without ever even like it even dawning on me on that side. And I remember that was like 2013, 2014. And I remember thinking, wow, like, and I would slowly see their content change, those that I had worked with. And I like that you brought up that, like, that has changed. I'm curious, and we're going to get into the collection and how that's brought to life, even how it turned into a book, which I think is just amazing. But I'm curious, from your view as a photographer, as a creator, has the ability to capture the sensuality over these years, over the last 13 years, how has that changed as maybe culture has become a little bit more open, but also maybe how you've been able to kind of tap in and show others that have been vulnerable before? I think for anyone that's out there, like, one of the reasons I love bringing creators like yourself on is that there are so many people listening right now, that your next door neighbor, your best friend, someone that in your life is a creator, a photographer, an artist, and they have a talent. And unfortunately, that talent hasn't been able to be brought to life to the world. And until you have people that are willing to be the firsts, right, that to be the early adopters to break the mold, people won't see that. And in a way, you were doing that through the catalog that you were building over all of these years, being able to show those that were brave early on to inspire others. How has that been, like, over those 13 years, and then bringing that whole collection together as like something that you can actually bring to life as a book and also as NFTs?
Yeah, first of all, I got to tell you how exciting it is to be able to talk about this, just because of the fact that when I very first started Sensuality, a lot of the images that came to me was a dream. So my cover shot right here, that was a dream. I literally woke up and I approached one of my friends and I said, I have this thought that came to me, and you're the perfect person. And so we shot the cover shot, and this was, I think, back in, I want to say it was 2007 that we shot this. And so first of all, I had to just talk some of my friends into posing for me. And of course, there's a lot of trust that goes into this, and they know me, and they know that I'm never going to do anything harmful with these images. So many of them have never been seen ever, and I've kept everything under lock and key all the time. My computers are password protected, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very, very careful. And even before I even started to actually publish start getting published, I reached out to every single one to make sure they were okay with it. So I just wanted to say that, because integrity is big, big, big for me, But I will say that when I started in 2007, it was so hard to get people into the door. And then I said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna do a big giant post on Facebook, and I'm gonna invite people to come and sit and talk with me. And so, and if they're interested, they can come and sit. And I had many women come, which was wonderful. But unfortunately, I could not get full-figured women to photograph with me. And so that was a big challenge. So, I knew that it was okay because I knew this was going to be a project I was going to be doing for a while. So fast forward to the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter. That really did a whole lot of, it really changed the temperature of where we're at today. And I've not had any problems, shooting, photographing, capturing full-figured women, and just the diversity that I've been able to go forward with after that. And then, they're like, "Do you want to show your face?" Absolutely. I mean, they're okay with it. I said, "This could be in a book." All right, that's fine. Where can I buy it? I mean, like literally, it has changed tremendously. Whereas before, my early work, I was being very careful with people's faces. So I just wanted to just kind of say that. So that has really changed, and so I'm so grateful that I could see that being positive.
Yeah, I love that as like a not only the confidence, but the outside effect of movements like the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter and a lot of this idea that we're bringing things out, right? And even just the notion, like I still like my like stomach turned when you said earlier in your story when they said not to speak Spanish, right? And I felt that, and I, as a cis white male that barely speaks English correctly, and took I took 4 years of Spanish and couldn't pass Spanish too. That was just me in high school. It was but I like hearing like that being kind of like ripped apart and early on, and now we've kind of moved this entire kind of conversation forward. Of course, as you mentioned, and we have to highlight where we still have a long way to go in a lot of these spaces, from equality to even understanding some of the nuances in how things are regulated, how filters are out there. I will tell you, just for those that are listening, and I know Delphi knows this because on the back end, I get very frustrated right now with AI, and this is a weird segue, but I promise it makes sense. Where I put certain terms into my AI prompts, expecting either randomization or some kind of equality. Maybe it's a little bit naive, but I started to get really mad. And now I have my own channel where I want to debunk and fix some of the nuances of AI. Like one of them being if I put human in the kitchen doing dishes, it always shows me 4 females. If I say someone walking out of a garage, it always shows me 4 males in the output, right? If I say superhero, which one that caught me off guard, I had to work, like my prompt is like 9 stages long to get a superhero that is female. And to me, that was like, wait a second, like, and I, as a girl dad, as someone that really wants to kind of bring a lot of these conversations to life, like those biases and things are really deep rooted in AI, which, let's also just be very clear, AI is only pulling from what society and culture and information has been put out there. So it's not, we want to blame AI, and we like to blame, so we blame AI for that, social media for the Me Too movement. But the truth is, the world and people have been corrupt and horrible humans for a long time. Social media brought it to life with the Me Too movement. AI, I hope, has that component where we start to recognize that a lot of the visuals and representation is still very skewed and incorrect, and it's no wonder certain biases and things live on. And Leslie, I know you want to tap in a little bit on like the expression side of it as well, and then we'll get into the NFT collection and the book that Debra has in the works as well.
I mean, I think this is actually a good segue because the common theme that I started to see and learn and hearing the story and then the artwork is it really is all about expression. And I think that that's just a wonderful thing to help people understand. And it's in so many different ways for you, Debra, as a photographer, and using this as your outlet for healing and for addressing those issues. But then in addition to that, helping people along the way, these beautiful women, that their journey of acceptance and their journey of self-discovery, but then simultaneously trying to stigmatize the difference between, as you said, sensuality and sexuality, but also from the concept of trying to get away from the destigmatizing sexual health. I think is an important aspect, and it's something that I talk to my kids a lot about, that sex in your body is not shameful. Like, we make it something that's shameful because of the way that it's been represented, but it's a distinct difference between intimacy and being intimate with someone, and sex as an act, like, it's just, there's a world of difference. And I think that you really represent that and express that in the journey and of the images. And it's been a long journey for you, for, as you said, many years. But I also want to switch it back to going to, with this journey and going to the book. And you've had this long collection of these, these images that are so amazing. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about the book, putting that together. It's been a long labor of love for you. So what has kept you going through this? And I mean, you've had these several years of collecting the photographs, and then you decide to make it a publication. I want to hear about that journey for you.
Okay, I'm going to also dig a little bit deep here, just because, I think this is really important when we talk about, gender roles and the way people and women are just represented in general, and also the LGBTQIA community. So specifically, lesbian women in general. I believe, just from a lot of things that have happened in my life, experiences that happened in my life, that the way that lesbians are looked at is sometimes, not all men, but some men use that for the consumption of their own type of enjoyment, right? And sometimes those relationships are not looked at as real, or sometimes they're looked at as a phase you're going to. And then gender roles also will make us say, okay, well, who's the guy? And who's the girl? Well, you kind of know who the girl is, but who's the guy of the, and then, of course, just, if a woman dresses more masculine, then clearly she wants to be a man. And there are so many stigmatisms. And of course, the most disrespectful one would be, oh, you just need to get, a good, have sex with a man. I'm not going to get too graphic of what they actually say to me. So all these types of things on top of being a woman, and the shame from being Hispanic, and the shame from being, lesbian, the shame just for being a woman. So getting all these together, and making the work, because I will say that I wanted to represent lesbian women, what it looks like to be in a relationship. Not everything in the book has that, but I wanted to be able to show that in the book. And I will tell you that sex in general, sensuality in general, there should never be any shaming, and there should not ever be shaming in pleasure. Pleasure, I have in my book, I have two women together, very artistically, women by themselves, body positivity. I have women with tattoos, and I have some, soft BDSM, and I have a throuple in there. And then the most important work that I think I've done, other than the one with large women, I've also photographed women who have had many kids before, or kids that have a lot of stretch marks on their body. And to me, that is probably the most beautiful photographs that I've ever made in my life, because those are just like beautiful vessels, and those stretch marks represent, women who have, they're populating our world. Without them, we cannot be here. It's that simple. So with all of that, that is what sensuality is. It's a culmination of all these different, I'm compartments I'm putting all together in one work of art. That's why it has taken me so many years to get it all together.
And I love, one of the first things when you and I were having the conversation about maybe what would NFTs look like, right? Your commitment and understanding of like, hey, I've been building this for so long. Not only has it been, something that you've been passionate and building, but you're also like commitment to them, commitment to your message, commitment to, hey, there's a reason certain ones have never been shared. There's a certain ones I put in the book. There's a bunch that I couldn't get into the book. And I think for any artist, this is one of the things that it's like, okay, well, how do we bridge these gaps online, offline, or how do we make sure we're making an impact? And I just have to say, what you shared just now is so important. And I want to say, as a cis white male, that I often say that I kind of got the luckiest thing to happen to me. One of the luckiest things to happen in my entire life was that my best friend Ashley coming out to me when she was 14 and not sharing publicly to anyone other than me until she was 18. And I was able to be there for her and learn at a very young age a lot of the things that you were mentioning, right? When I would tell my friends that my best friend was a lesbian that I went to college with and we shared the same dorm with, they were like, oh, it must be nice, lucky you. And I had to educate from a very early spot of like, whoa, hold on. Like, and I didn't realize that I was probably portraying that very same thing. And it wasn't until it was my best friend, who's still in my life today. And I actually messaged her to give her kind of a little nudge that I was excited to share your story and put this out there today as well. And so I think for a lot of people that are listening, some of this might be like, you feel either like, judged, or you're recognizing some of your own mistakes, your own biases, your own judgments. And the beauty that I like to kind of put it, this is like acknowledging this is a beautiful part and part of the impact of your collection. And hopefully the impact of us coming together and collaborating is that we need to bring these conversations forward and change the narrative forward. And I know, Leslie, you brought it up with your kids in the conversation. I very much with my daughters in that conversation. And, for me, that's one of the reasons that I love that you were willing to put this out there. But I'll also say it's a beautiful thing when a creator has this much like love and belief in your work, and also like intention. I guess that's probably your intentionality with every aspect. So when you were building out the book, I don't believe, maybe you can correct me, if NFTs weren't on that radar at all, but bringing that book to life has been, a lot of work. You told me a lot about like the style, and you're having to make sure certain things are perfect to what you look at. And I will tell anybody, like the spine of this book is amazing. I remember you showed me that, and I was like, wow, there's like attention to detail. Talk to us a little bit about like that attention to detail and how you brought some of that story and impact into the book. And then how did you think of it from which things you wanted to become NFTs, which we will kind of highlight that collection as well.
Yeah, first of all, picking the images in the book was not an easy task. It took me weeks because I have hundreds of images for Sensuality. And, I wanted to make sure to, of course, take the temperature from when I started in 2007 all the way up to 2022. And so it wasn't an easy thing. And so as far as me picking NFTs with the book and incongruent to basically marry Web 2 and Web 3 together, I thought that was an interesting thing. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to make a few images that are in the book over to Web 3, and to make that kind of like a special type of thing. People are going to be able to own an image that's actually in the book, and then which is amazing, because then if they get the book, then they'll be able to see their own image that they're owning in the book. And then there's going to be some images that didn't quite make the book that are going to be just special to and exclusive to Web3, which is I think is a kind of a really interesting. I never even thought of that, and so, but I love the idea of, because I always thought to myself, how could I make this very important work? Because someone maybe might look at it, 50 years from now and be able to see, oh, this was created, in 2007, or this was put on the blockchain in, 2023. And it's just like where we've evolved from back then to the future. And, I won't be around for that, but how important these images would be for people looking in the future, just kind of like how we hear music today and fashion today and stuff like. And even, I saw the very first photograph and I was like, wow, we've come a long way. So all which are very, very important, I think, and that's why I'm so excited about Web3 and putting NFTs, that a project I've worked for so long and so diligently, and working with Leslie, being very intentional on which ones we're putting out there. And I mean, we have talked, I can't remember, hours on the phone, and dissecting on why and when and what and how. So, hats off to Leslie. I can't do it without her.
That's very kind of you. I appreciate that. But it's been a fun journey. I really, really have enjoyed it. I already knew you going into the project. We have, been connected as NFT friends and the community that we have in NFT 365, but to like connect on a personal level, and it's just been really fun. And so I've really enjoyed that aspect of it too. But through this process and getting to know you, there's definitely been parts that you've been nervous about. And so I think I wanted to kind of circle back to that because, again, part of the platform here is we want to empower other artists and other people. That's Fanzo's thing all day long, is empowering others and amplifying others. So I want to take this opportunity to use this to inspire others that are in a similar situation to you, where they are maybe trying to bridge the Web 2 to Web 3 role, whether it's photography or art, and how you've been nervous about it, but you've come to the other side of it, I think, and you're ready, super motivated for the collection, and we're super excited. And we'll get into some details, of course, in a second, but talk a little bit, if you can, about overcoming that and, being, confident in moving forward with a collection and that journey.
Well, you've heard about the challenges that I faced, growing up, and if there's more than anything, if there's one thing that I can do for any female out there, gay or not, is for them to be able to. I'm hoping that this work will help them to be able to reach out and not be scared and take their best foot forward. I hope that other Hispanic little girls can see this and say, I can do that, and that's all I want to accomplish, is simply that. If I can do anything in this world, I just want the next artist behind me to accomplish that, because all the other people, just like Dorothea Lang and one of my favorites is Vivian Mayer, which is just, that was a whole interesting story. If anybody ever gets a chance, it's called Finding Vivian Mayer, and it's a film that was released, I think, in 2015 or 2016. Literally, her negatives were found in a locker, just where you store your stuff, and then it was like brought into the public, which she would have hated doing all the stuff that goes behind it. And so I kind of saw a little bit of myself in her, to where it's like I created all this art and just hundreds of images, and I was like, man, if I put that book out, I'm gonna have to talk about it. I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to do X, Y, and Z. And these are all the things I did not want to do. However, I got to tell you that I want to just kind of back up a little bit. I probably wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been for Fanzo. And I was also in a room with Fanzo and Alexa Carlin, and he was talking about pressing the damn button. And I got up on stage shaken and asked him a question like, how do you not be emotional when you're talking about something that's so emotional? And that just resonated with me so much. And then I called up Alexa and said, I'm going to press the damn button, just because I knew her more than him. I couldn't call him and say, he didn't know from I didn't know how to really reach him. I didn't know if he was going to, if I DM'd him, he'd say, oh, stranger danger, Yeah.
I remember that day. I know where I was in my house when we were in that room when you asked that question. And for those that, Clubhouse being just social audio, right? And we were especially during the pandemic, it was a massive lifeline. And Alexa, another connection of Alexa Rose Carlin, who was a beautiful human putting her story out there. And I actually first got to know her via live video, and she would message me before almost all of her live streams and said, I need a pep talk. Why am I doing this? Like, she was very, early on. And now I see her TikToks all over my feed, and she's, blowing up in many different ways. And I remember when you asked that, that question, and for me, the emotional side, anyone that's listened to the podcast, the episodes, there's definitely been emotional episodes. There's also been, vulnerable aspects, even recently with having to end of life with a ADHD coin, and something that, I just, it's still just saying that, my stomach turns a little bit, just because I was committed and all in, and had trust built with so many people. And unfortunately, a brand and a company that I had researched and thought I could trust, I had to learn the hard way. But I wanted to, when you said there about like that, vulnerability, and when you were shaking, getting up and asking that question, like that is so, like that, like the message of press the damn button is that essence of like, there are so many great people that have so many great stories to tell. And sometimes it's just, we need permission. Sometimes we just need to be reminded to press the damn button. But we also have to recognize that, like, we have to do it in our own way, right? And coming to this. And so, like, I love with your collection, and when we were bringing the collection to life, and Leslie, was kind of enabling all this to kind of come to fruition. It was funny. I didn't factor in, and I just want to be honest about, like, the idea of like, would these be okay being shared on Nifty Gateway, right? Funny enough, like, I went to them on a call and I was like, hey, I know you guys are leaning into photography more, where most of their early on years in NFTs was not as much photography. It was mostly digital creations and animations. And they were like, oh my goodness, that's a big, marching orders of ours. And so I got excited. I was like, Debra, we're good. And then it was like, wait, are these going to be work on there? I'm like, yeah, we're good. And I was like, oh wait, I better go ask if sensual photos, and ones that that are depicting important, impactful movements, are okay on the platform. And just to be honest, if Nifty Gateway had said no, then we would be moving somewhere else and launching this collection somewhere that is on a Web3 platform that is. And I will say, even from when I asked that, I've noticed that a couple other marketplaces have actually enabled some settings for people to allow those that are underage to be able to filter, but also allow for the freedom of expression in many ways. And Nifty Gateway was very supportive, very open, and they were excited. And I will say, one of the messages back was like, we're excited because we need this conversation to be open even amongst our community. And so let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned some of the NFT photos are in the book. Some of them are ones that didn't make it in the book. And I think the rarity of that is really based on all of you who end up being holders, right? Because I think you can look at one versus the other of like what you own, or maybe you own both, right? You own some that are in the book, some that are out. So talk about a little bit about the collection. How many pieces are in there? It will be up on our Nifty Gateway storefront for all those to check out the drop. And we, of course, we posting it on our social, but talk to us a little bit about like the actual collection and what people can expect.
So this first drop, I'm going to go ahead and do a even baker's dozen, 12. And it's, again, Leslie and I we started with 19, and I didn't want to do quite that many. So we started just with 12. And like, I noticed a lot of photographers do something way different than what I'm about to do. And that's okay. I know that in Web3, my audience is not as big as my Web2 audience, but that's okay, because all my life I seem to have broken rules. So why not break some more? And
Yes.
so it's like,
Pushing
who's to say-
boundaries.
yeah, and who I could maybe be trending something differently. I don't know. We'll see. But they're gonna see beautiful black and white images. I definitely have a amazing full-figured woman in there that is just one of the most powerful images I've ever shot in my life. There are a couple of women together that are just so quiet and beautiful, and that's a little bit of what I want my viewer to see. I want my, like when you're watching a movie and there's this very, very touching scene. It's very quiet, and and you're just kind of like holding your breath, for that moment. And it's sort of like that. I want you to I kind of want you to feel like and I hope that you do feel this. And it's okay if you don't, because everybody's different. I want them to they're turning the corner and they see these two women embracing, or they see this one woman just being quiet with herself. And again, it's not like a sexual thing, but it's just like, oh, and they're just like holding their breath just to kind of watch to see what happens, because it's so touching and it's so moving and it's just so beautiful. And we kind of want to be that. We want to experience that in our life. I can't tell you how many times I cry watching movies and stuff, because I'm going like, that's what I want to feel right there. And that's that same feeling that I want people to feel when they look at my work. They like, I want that. I want to be able to just skip my breath and just yes, that's me. And I want them to go into that photograph and become that, to explore their inside themselves, because we all have it inside of ourselves, all of us. One time in our life, we've had that feeling. We need to have that more.
I think that's why it's a great collection for Web3, because it's such deep connection is the word that comes to mind. Deep connection with one another and deep connection within ourselves. And that journey of discovery and whether it's you're finding your voice, you're finding your pleasure, you're finding finding you. And that is a place that in Web3 that people are able to do that. I feel as though many of us can be our most authentic selves in a Web3 environment, because we are not held to the social standards that are put upon us, work corporate standards, and unlearning unhealthy behaviors. We're able to be exactly who we are. And to be honest, I think sometimes it's easier because a lot of it is behind a screen, or behind a keyboard or behind a phone. So that makes it a little bit easier. So then we get to that level a lot faster. But bringing that entire feeling to real life in the journey of your photos, and they tell a story that's amazing, I think is the feeling that I hope personally that people walk away with, and looking at the images and seeing that, wow, this is beautiful because of what you see kind of transpiring from the evolution of one to the other. So hopefully I can even do justice to to explaining that for listeners that haven't seen the collection yet. But
Yeah, and for our listeners, we're going to put links in the show notes. We'll be, of course, tweeting out links. If you've purchased NFTs from us on Nifty Gateway, we dropped the 12 time capsule collection last year. We have a couple other collections that we've dropping there. The beauty of Nifty Gateway as well, for those that aren't familiar, you can purchase with a credit card, create an account with just an email address. You don't have to have a MetaMask or a wallet, so it's a very Web2 friendly environment. But the beautiful thing about Nifty Gateway, and why I think this collection is beautiful there, but it also allows you to be able to export it to your wallet on MetaMask and be able to see it, view it in your OpenSea collection, share it on your digital displays, or even have it printed out as a using something like Mixtiles and the things that I have that I've done as well. And I'll just say, for Debra, I was excited when we first started connecting and saying, okay, this will be a great collection to put out there. And I think twofold is I was like, it's your story, it's the impact that your work and all these years is going to have on others. But it's also this idea of finally a kind of like a vehicle of Web3, allowing it to be brought to life in a digital sense, right? Without the filters, without the other aspects. And I hope it also drives conversations. I will say for the men that are listening that believe in not only equity and inclusion and not only empowerment, but we also have to recognize that part of this comes in how we show up and how we support and how we celebrate. And I will challenge anyone that, you know, the true impact that we can make is purchasing these works of art and even it making an impact being in a wallet alongside of other NFTs. When someone that goes and looks at someone's wallet and maybe it starts a conversation that you're able to have. And that's a big belief that I've had around mental health, around a lot of tough conversations is, you know, how do we get the right people in the wrong rooms and the wrong people in the right rooms? And I know, Debra, you've heard me say that many times, as I do often on social audio. And to me, that's part of what we're doing here, right? We're bringing this conversation that maybe for most of this impact of this episode, people aren't even taking away the fact that the NFTs are taking away a lot of the impact and movement we've made, but also a lot of the things that we still have to go. But I also think it's just a beautiful reminder that how many other Debras are there that are out there in the world right now that have amazing talent and that have been doing it, right? You've been putting in the work. And let's be very clear, you've been very successful in your world, and that is amazing. But we also know that we should be able to take that to greater heights and not be filtered or put down or the microphone not given. And I believe this is a great start of that. You mentioned this is, the first of many collections that will to come. And so we will put this with the links for all of Debra's socials as well in the show notes. Make sure you connect there. Debra, anything lastly you want to kind of wrap it with and let the audience know before we send them on their way, hopefully to go check out the drop, go check out the collection. And if they're lucky enough to get in before they're sold out, then to get one themselves, or maybe they just have to follow and maybe buy the next collection if this one's sold out by then. But I'll give the mic to you.
We have to talk about the collection.
Yes.
So I'll let you go ahead with the drop date details, and I'm happy to fill in any of the rest.
Yeah. So I do want to say this. I think I'm going to have 8 1-of-1s. The utility there, like, I'm still getting my feet wet with the utilities and stuff, but I do have a little bit of a utility. So if you buy a 1-of-1, you are going to get a copy of the book. And here's
it is so gorgeous. It is so gorgeous.
It's very I definitely wanted to show that. It's definitely in still at the printers, and it's something that I'm taking great care as far as quality going forward. So I'm hoping that this is going to come in the next several months. I'm just got to make sure that it's all good. One more really important aspect is, to all of my friends out there that are probably wondering, like, why am I partnering with the cis white male to do this launch? And I want to just kind of talk a little bit about that. I've known Fanzo for many years. I've never met him in real life. However, what I do know this is, like, this guy amplifies so many women. And so since I've listened to over 365 episodes, I can tell you that many of those episodes have been amplifying women. And that is so, so important to me in this. And plus, he's a girl dad of 3. I mean, come on, I could not have found a better person, and his team behind him is just solid gold. And so, gosh, I can't even begin to tell you. And then the last thing that I've got to say before I'm going to let Leslie go ahead and talk more about the drop, but I have to say that my parents have always, always, always supported me. And I'm so grateful for that. So grateful. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I love you.
I've gotten to, talk to you a little bit about your parents here and there. And I think it's amazing that you have such a great support system. And I think that that's just, it really shows, I think, in the person that you are and how sweet and kind and fun you are, and how you've just have taken this despite every obstacle that's thrown against you, be it in early or later, has just been amazing. So I'm sure I have to attribute some of that to having a good support system in your family. Now, as far as the drop, we are going live with the drop. It will be a live drop on Nifty Gateway. So shout out to Nifty. It's been a great platform to work with. I'm super happy. I talk about them separately in terms of how awesome they are in terms of feedback and assistance and so on. But the collection will drop on 2/3/23. So some numerology there at 2:23 Eastern time. So stay tuned for that. You'll start to see it trending on upcoming drops a few days prior. So we're also hosting Debra at Superpower Hour on Tuesday next week, although this might come out, the episode might come out after that. So if you didn't get a chance to attend, you should go back and take a listen, as we'll have her as an artist spotlight and talk a little bit more about the collection, invite others up to share as well. But then we'll also be having Debra's already scheduled it, a Twitter space on Friday, the 3rd, February the 3rd, as a launch party and inviting other artists. Everybody is welcome, and it'll start at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So as the space gets going, then of course the collection will be live. So it's a beautiful collection of, I think it's 12 pieces now. I talked her into adding one. So there was one more that I was like, oh, this is such a beautiful one. We have to get this in there. So thank you for humoring me. So there are some one of ones, and there's some that have additions. So there's multiple price points for people, to fit within your budget. But obviously, each one has a story tied to it. And of course, while the entire collection itself is a journey, each one has its own special meaning in the collection. So I highly recommend to take a look at it, to read some of the description and understand a little bit about it, because I think that while your own emotions will be evoked by seeing the image, but reading a little bit more about it will help too. But we're super excited to partner with you on it, and it'll be coming out here in a few days, really.
Yes, love it, love it. Excited. I love the numerology behind it. I mean, 2323 for a podcast that launched at 11/11/21. That just fits in everything here. And Debra, I love, thank you for being vulnerable and transparent. Thank you for the kind words. And I think for everyone that's out there, right? When you think about, I talk a lot about how do we drive change in the Web3 space, and I believe part of our problem as a Web3 community, as a Web3 group, on getting others to see the light, is that we don't do a great job of explaining use cases or highlighting people and stories that we're going to be able to make an impact and a difference at a greater level. And I believe that that's part of the goal of this podcast. And I believe this is a beautiful episode to send to people that are looking to understand, why did Debra and I were in this clubhouse room when these people are bragging about their $400 monkey photos, and we were like, what in the hell is this? And I remember looking it up and being like, it's some financial voodoo monopoly thing that they're doing online, and I had no interest. So there are a lot of people that were there, but it's that use cases, it's that something that they can resonate with, it's something that they can connect with. And I think this is a beautiful episode for people to share. If you're listening to this week, next week, months, a year from now, when someone is asking you why NFTs, or what can NFTs do that Facebook and Instagram couldn't do, or what does this all look like, or what is the impact it makes, just send them this episode, let them listen to this story. Debra, so thanks so much for joining us. Leslie, I have to give you an amazing shout out too. Not only have you taken this and run with it, but I think for anyone that's out there, not only do you need a Leslie on your team, and you can't have her, but the aspect of like artist enablement and working with artists, and that the word trust has been shared here a lot. And I will say it's trust in all circles. And I think we sometimes overlook, we think, oh, it's trust between us and our NFT holders. No, it's trust between team members, trust between the artists, trust in the platforms. And as we said, a platform that I cared about deeply with Rally, unfortunately, I lost that trust because of what they had. And I think for a lot of these things to come to life, that like trust triangle has to exist. And Leslie, you're an amazing steward of that. And the feedback and the highlights. And I know with other collections and future ones, we're excited for that. And I'll just say that at the end here, if you're interested maybe in wanting your collection, including kind of our work front and our store, we will include a link for you to be able to apply to have that. As I said, Debra was our very first one that we reached out to and said, hey, we want to bring this to life. We have Jeff and Ryan who also are dropping a collection, but we are going to kind of open it up now that we're kind of figuring out some of the nuances, figuring out some of the moving parts that comes with making NFTs, but also what do artists want? What do people want? And so for all of our listeners too, I would love for you to tweet out, when you buy one of the photos or the images, or even just if the podcast episode resonated with you and it's something was important, please share that out on social. You'd be amazed how those tweets mean something. And if it's something you would prefer to send privately, I know you could DM myself or Debra or Leslie or even the podcast account, and we'll make sure to relay that. So Debra, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for your mom and dad for supporting you and enabling and empowering all this to happen. And for me, this is what it's all about, my friends. We is greater than me. And until next time, make it a great day, everybody. Cheers.